Green, green, green.
Alright guys, we are in Automobilista 1 and this is the 2017 Brazilian stock car, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to drive this back to back with the same car, same track in Automobilista 2, just to see how they compare, how the AI is different, how the car is different, physics. We're going to talk force feedback. So let's give a bit of background. I've done maybe 4 or 5 laps practice warm-up before jumping into AMS1 into this car on this track, and it's the Cordoba touring car track, so it's a simple enough layout. And the reason I picked this track was because it's got a bit of high speed, there's a few high speed bends, there's a couple of braking zones, but other than that it's not too technical, so it should be easy enough just to get raw physics. Whoa.
Car left, all clear, clear.
Alright, so the AI are realistic, they make mistakes, they recover well, and
okay, your brake temperature is spot on. Car left, keep right.
Yeah, so that's quite good. That's quite good. Right, let me just gather my thoughts after that. But nice to see realistic AI kind of make mistakes and stuff like that, and you know, force you to react as a driver. So all good there. AI look pretty good. They're battling each other up ahead. So yeah, that's nice to see. So in terms of the force feedback, the front end feels a little bit too compliant almost. It's like there's a lot of downforce on the front end, or you know, it doesn't want to understeer, or it's difficult to get it to understeer, even in high speed corners. And that may be down to the aero on the car. As I mentioned, this this 2017 Brazilian stock car, it runs like an aero kind of body, similar to the DTMs in the 2010-ish type era. And they stopped running this in 2018 and 19 in the Pro Series, and that brought like Toyota back into the mix because it was cheaper to, you know, run the cars basically for the teams. So the compliant front end could be just down to the extra downforce that this car generates. Like I say, it'll be interesting when we get into AMS2 and see if you have a similar kind of front end, let's say. Alright, but everything else feels good. Everything, you know, the handling is good, it feels natural, it's enjoyable to drive, and that may be in part down to, let's say, the nice front end. Now, one thing I did notice, you know, if I try to drive this one-handed, you'll see the steering wheel wants to oscillate. Now, I'm running quite a bit of damping on this wheel, like it's 20% or so, or 18% or whatever in FanLab. Usually in my sims I run maybe 5% damping, and actually on this as well I've also had to increase the interpolation filter as well, or for any SimiCube users that's basically the reconstruction filter, so it takes all of the rawness and the feedback and transfer it into a smoother signal. So I've had to do a bit of work on that, but you know, whatever, once you do it and the sim feels nice, then all's forgiven, I guess. Other stuff as well, like the weight shift on the car is there. I can feel if I'm braking and I get too greedy on the brakes, like the front will lock and the car will push a tiny bit. There's elements of push understeer on throttle as well if the front loses grip. I can feel the understeer as it happens, it feels natural. Feel the understeer threatening here. If I power on, there's the push understeer, but then it grips up and the back comes with it. So it's predictable, this car, I can feel it. The physics are telling me a story basically through the feedback, and it all makes sense. It's an enjoyable drive as well, and the AI, as we've seen, appear to be quite good.
Left side, all clear, clear.
Yeah, feels nice. Back end is quite compliant on this, surprisingly. I wasn't expecting that to be as compliant. Again, I'm used to driving the later model Brazilian stock cars in AMS2, and they're a lot more difficult by comparison to this, I can tell you that now. But like I say, I'm interested to see how this car is in AMS2 in comparison to this. But
Car
the
left side.
the interactions with the curbs and all of that
Keep right.
feel really good.
Keep right. All clear. Clear left. Last lap. Make it count.
Okay, so one more to go.
Left side. Still there.
Could make up a few positions here. Let's see what the AI are actually like then. So it looks like we're going to be deadlocked in the battle with them.
Clear. Clear left.
Seem very well balanced. I'm running the AI on about 95%, I think, or something like that. And low aggression because I don't want them dive bombing all over the place.
Left side. Keep right. Clear left. On your left. Keep right.
That's good, the way the AIs start to struggle if they hit the curb a little bit. That's impressive. So not only are they racing us, but they're also racing their own race
Watch your right.
against the track, basically, which is
Your line.
really nice to
Clear
see.
right. Clear right. Watch your right. Still there. Clear.
Yeah, I can't see what the fuss is about when it comes to Automobilista 1. It feels a bit like, almost like Tales of War Factor 2. And I believe it's got some relationship to Or Factor 1, which I have never driven, by the way.
You're in P9.
But it does feel more like Or Factor 2 than it does Automobilista 2, if that makes sense. But let's unpack this, and yeah, let's have a quick look at the replay and see what the story is. So, I mean, let's go back to the start and skip forward. So, yeah, I mean, as a car, it felt really nice to drive. Predictable, done what you'd expect it to do. Felt like I had a lot of downforce. It felt lighter than the weight of it actually is. I mean, it's a big V8, but it felt a lot lighter than that, and maybe that was down to the bit of extra aero that this particular era of Brazilian stock car had, like the 2017 models. All in all, felt comfortable and nice driving experience. It didn't feel overly challenging, as in the car control element. It did feel challenging, however, like trying to hit the apexes, get the brake, get it turned in on time. But I never felt challenging to the point where it was going to suddenly kill you or whatever else. So there was that moment there where I had to avoid the spinner. But yeah, really good, really impressed with how it felt. I mean, graphically, you know, you're coming from this into the likes of, you know, if you're coming from AMS2 back into this, you are going to notice the graphics definitely are a little bit below, but I mean, generally speaking, I mean, it's I think it's fine. You know, like it is what it is when you're driving it. You don't really notice, or you don't really care too much. But yeah, very impressive. Like I see what people, you know, when they say that, oh, AMS2, they still prefer that sometimes, or sorry, AMS1, they'll say they prefer it to AMS2, or, you know, it's still their favourite sim, and, you know, people scratching their head like, why is let's say an older looking game, an older looking sim, why is that in people's, you know, number one on the list? And I get it now, I understand why that would be. It feels really great to drive, I have to say. And yeah, it surprised me. It has surprised me a little. But what we'll do, we'll stop this one here. I'll load up AMS2. We'll jump into the same car, same track, and we'll do a comparison and see how they differ, if they differ much, which I believe they will. But let's try and put a bit of sense onto it, where and why and how. Catch you in a few minutes. Right guys, so here we are in Automobilista 2 for the same test we did on Automobilista 1. So I'm in the 2019 Brazilian stock car, so I did make a mistake earlier in the 2017. It was 2019 was the last season with the aero body kit. So basically the same car. But yeah, let's get into it. It's again a 5-minute race around Cordova. Same car, same track. So yeah, let's go for this and see how it goes. starting mid-pack as well to try and get an AI race going on. So yeah, let's see. They backed up a little bit into turn 1, but it's to be expected, I suppose. Yeah, okay, so immediately when compared to AMS1, I can feel that the front end is not as compliant. It does wash out a little bit more at the front compared to AMS1, and it's definitely more temperamental on turning. Like if I turn in and let's say I understeer on the entry, I found in AMS1 I could kind of throttle around it and get the back to somehow, you know, steer the car, almost like steer from the rear. But that's not present in AMS2, and nor should it be really. So AMS2, from a physics perspective, seems to have the car behaviour right. Now, that being said, it doesn't feel as nice to drive as AMS1, right? And I can sum that up to the reason being it feels more difficult. I have to think more about how I'm positioning the car and how I'm feeding the car into the corner. See here, like I have to scrub off a bit more speed, alright, compared to AMS1. And I have to be way more patient, trailing the brake in. Getting on power is a little bit snappier, it feels. So, in a nutshell, this car feels a lot more raw. It's a bit more of a beast to tackle. Certainly not as easy as it is in AMS1, that's for damn sure. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's neither. It's just something to be aware of, that's it. I'm not saying one is better than the other or anything like that. It's just merely an observation that I have to think about what I'm doing here a lot more. Okay, let's get some push to pass going. Okay, whoa, ran a bit wide. The steering as well is a lot smoother compared to AMS1. Like in AMS1 we had a bit of rocking back and forward on the straight. I don't have it here at all. The car's dead straightforward, nothing, no chatter coming through the force feedback whatsoever. And I'm running a higher FFB setting, by the way. I'm running like an extra 12% on the Fanatec wheelbase output, and my damper is a lot less as well. I think I run AMS2 at about 3%. Let me just double check. It's actually appears to be off. I'll double check it at the end of the race. I'll flash up my FFB settings, but I'm almost certain that it's like no more than 3 or 5%, where in AMS1 I had to run it at 18% and run a bit of natural friction to try and get rid of the oscillations, but don't have that problem in AMS2. Hey, pulling out a bit of a gap, it seems. Both of them are very fun to drive. AMS2 is definitely the more difficult, and it's definitely more sensitive to pitch. Like I find mid-corner, if I'm understeering, I can't get on the throttle as quick. I have to kind of wait for the car to do its rotation, because if I stamp on it or even feed it in gently, what it will do is it'll pitch the back, or it'll squat the back down, pitch the front up, and it'll make the understeer worse, which is exactly what would typically happen in a race car. That's why you have to trail brake to keep the nose kind of pitched in so that it rotates off the front of the car. In AMS2 I found that action a bit more forgiving to do, easier to do, and it would turn easier on throttle if you needed it to. It was still a challenge, like I'm not saying it was easy or anything like that, it was just easier compared to AMS2. AMS2 was, you know, if you watch the front end, it punishes it a lot more. Trying to get the front end back in check is more of a task. It's like the more you overdrive it, then trying to chase lap time, the more difficult and the worse it becomes. Yeah, so it's sometimes better to be patient. You see the understeer there just gets worse and worse and worse as we go along, you know? Yeah, so from a physics perspective, AMS2 appears to be more realistic, I think, in that regard. And again, these are just my initial impressions, just having driven this particular car. AMS1, certainly from a driving feel perspective, because it's that bit more forgiving, it does feel a little bit nicer. You know, because you don't have to, you know, think as much, and you can almost like drive above the limit a little without being completely screwed. Where in AMS2, driving above the limit tends to punish you a bit more, I think. Like I'm going deep in here and it's actually pushing me out wide. Like if you look back at the AMS1 video, like any time that I ran wide, I was able to, well, it was rarely that I ran wide, I don't think, but I was able to rescue the situation pretty quickly. So yeah, definitely noticed that. Both of them are really good guys, you know, so you're not going to get me saying that one is better than the other in many respects. I think they both do things pretty well in different ways. So let's pull off the interface and we'll unpack AMS2. So stating the obvious, and you know, graphically it's way better, and the sounds are way better as well. You know, you're more in it in this because it's newer. It's just more immersive in that sense, you know, because you've got better looking cars, better looking tracks, better sounds, and as I say, from a driving physics perspective, and I will always say, like, you know, often a lot of people think falsely that the more difficult the car is to drive, that the more realistic it must be, and that's not always the case. But I did think that in AMS1 these cars were a little bit maybe too forgiving. And I even commented that before I even drove this. I thought, you know, based on a big heavy V8 touring car, stock car, I'd expect the front end to be a bit less compliant in AMS1. And then I thought maybe it's just a downforce thing. Maybe it's these type of cars they did run with like aero packs and stuff like that. As we can see, it's you know. But again, jumping in here, as I expected, it was still a bit uncompliant. Not quite as bad as the 2021 model Brazilian stock cars, but you know, it wasn't quite that bad. But it's still a touring car at the end of the day. It's still one of these stock cars, and the fact that it has a bit of aero on the bodywork wasn't going to make that much of a difference. So my initial thought from AMS1 that you might be saved in AMS2 with a good bit of downforce was actually incorrect, because yeah, we've got a bit of extra downforce, but it's not enough to make it drive in the forgiving way on the front end the way it was in AMS1. But like I say, you know, to be fair, like AMS1 compared to AMS2, like AMS2 has got the latest developments, the latest knowledge and data from the cars, the tyres, the aero packages, you know, so they're two sims from different eras, to be honest. You know, and you can't compare them fairly side by side, but I will say both of them offer a fun driving experience, and you know, you're still driving the car in both games, you're still simulating reality. Physics are really good on both, by the way. I'm not saying AMS1 the physics were bad. All I'm saying is that it was a little bit more forgiving than what I'd expect it to be, and AMS2 then gave me the actual packages to what I did expect these cars would behave like, which are frustrating a little bit, you know, fun to drive but frustrating at the same time. Like when you overdrive the front end, it's difficult to come back from it, and you have to really be careful then that you don't destroy the front tyres, because yeah, the more abuse I was giving the front, and I only done a few laps by the way, right, but the more abuse I was giving it, I could notice a little bit that the grip was getting worse and worse, so it was starting to drop off. Now, I don't know if that's down to a tyre wear model, or whether that's down to like the model they have with, like, let's say the surface temp of the tyre getting like really hot, the flash temp getting really hot, and then that will just kill the grip for the next lap maybe. But I did definitely notice something, that when I overdrove the front, it got progressively worse. But yeah, make what you will of that, guys. I'm going to be racing both, by the way. I think AMS1 has a lot to offer as well. But I just thought it'd be interesting to do a back-to-back comparison in the same car, on the same track, by the same studio, basically. And how different they actually feel. They're similar in some ways, different in others. I know they're obviously built on different game engines, right? So, you know, without stating the obvious, but the behaviour of the car was similar in both sims, right? So the car itself, I think, is modelled quite well. It's just when you get to the extremes, whether it be understeer or oversteer situations, then the differences became quite clear. But in the middle element, or the middle ground, when you're driving the car, you're racing the car, there was a lot of similarities as well, but again, at the edges of braking, accelerating, turning, grip, the differences were quite large in some areas. But overall, guys, both of them are fantastic, and I'm definitely going to put a few laps into both for sure. I'm going to run these alongside ACC. I want to do like an offline Brazilian stock car championship, and yeah. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts. I know most of you would have probably come from AMS1 into AMS2, or some maybe even still play AMS1 as your main sim. Let me know what you think, or if I've captured this wrongly through the force feedback. But again, when I do these kind of comparisons, I'm not looking for a winner. There is no winner. I think they're both great sims. It's just literally what I feel through the steering wheel versus what I expect the car to do, versus how the car handles, why it handles a particular way, how it handles a particular way, and the feedback and the information it gives me. And I just try and relay that to help people decide, okay, if you're thinking of AMS1 or AMS2, which might be better for you, which might be more enjoyable based off what you're looking for. By all means, let me know what you think. I'd love to hear different opinions. Yeah, and let's get a discussion going. But again, guys, thanks again for watching, and hope this sheds a bit of light onto some of the differences that I found, maybe you found as well, between these two great titles. Thanks again, guys, as always, for watching. Have a good one.